Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 3's Q&A with Dr. MorganWeber. Yesterday, we were talking about emotions and the effect on the body. In specific, we were talking about NET. So, Morgan, I think what we might do is, can you just give a 2-minute quick summary of what we were talking about yesterday? And then we can ask people if they have any specific questions.
Absolutely. So we were talking about the power of emotions. I think that's a big concept, is utilizing emotions as a transformational tool as opposed to a negative aspect in our life. Or just trying to avoid them, plain and simple. It's about utilizing those emotions to help us grow, overcome challenges and make some breakthroughs. So sometimes we hit our head against the wall time and time again, and that's a really great place to channel some energy and some work into clearing that emotional charge so that we can catapult forward and sort of push our comfort zone and expand in business, in life, in our own personal journey. So NETs was one of those tools. That stands for neuro-emotional technique, and it's something that we use in the practice with our clients to, if you like, adjust the head above the base of the skull. It's an adjustment inside the brain, if you like, and that's a really powerful tool to delve into the subconscious brain and some of those programs that are just on autopilot and always kind of steer us in a direction where we may just hit that same effect of bouncing back and forward off that same aggravating wall again and again and again. And if you look at your life, there may be those signs of, boom, we got that, and then all of a sudden back to that same point. And I feel like, that's the journey of life, really, is learning from those things and evolving from them, utilizing them as a tool for transformation, as opposed to something we are just the victim of. If you choose to see it that way, it's an empowered state where you can utilize those emotions and that feedback as a tool, as I was saying. Some of the other elements that we talked about as well is just reframing things. The way you choose to think about something can also reveal some of the charge, some of the emotions about it. So, flipping the switch, I like to say, is a really great tool of changing your perspective on that challenge, that topic, that person, and also an attitude of gratitude, focusing in on, the things we're grateful for in our life, and actively doing that as a regular lifestyle thing. And those healthy habits in terms of our emotion are hugely powerful, and you can't possibly measure at the application of those as a regular basis and what that can bring and the speed at which things can sometimes change. I've certainly noticed as a chiropractor, just in terms of as a business sense, that you're your own limit, so to speak. So you'll have these experiences, and it's like you get to a point and then you kind of just, things won't grow past this point, and then all of a sudden, poof, there'll be this distinction made, this clarification, and an NET and those other tools might be part of that breakthrough. And then all of a sudden you elevate to this whole new level, and then that's just easy. And you're, in our case as a chiropractor, your practice grows up until a certain point and you hit that threshold again, bounce your head against the wall, and then hang, and then there's distinction and breakthrough, and it evolves again. So sometimes you can utilize NETs not just for personal development, but for also business development and professional development. They intertwine. I would say the personal development is at the heart of that professional development, and your business might be mirroring that back to you. And that, again, is one of those, just slightly different ways of looking at it, that can be profound and lead to big breakthroughs.
Oh, absolutely. And that's, that's why I founded Whole Grow. The whole system is based around holistic growth, because I believe that through my own experiences and observations, unless we're growing the person, our business cannot grow, and you're going to come across the same stumbling blocks, the same for example, difficult clients or difficult conversations, or repeated patterns with staff, being let down, whatever that pattern might be, there is a very, very strong chance that those patterns are being repeated in your private life, or it's at least triggering areas that you need to look at to be healed and go back to that trace element. So what we might do is, Gina, a couple of other people have joined. So thank you for jumping on. If you do have a question, let us know. But Gina's typed in one earlier. What I might do is open your mic, Gina, so you can actually ask your question to Morgan. You should be able to chat now.
Sorry. Have you got me?
Yeah. I
Great.
can hear you loud.
Right. Hopefully the office can't.
Oh, no, I didn't mean loud. I mean, loud and clear. I've just forgot the last word.
All good. I guess, I mean, you mentioned your son, I think, goes and has NET, and I'm interested in helping my daughter on, she's regressed a lot on, I think I touched on it yesterday, on training in the bathroom variety. Sorry, I'm in the office. So could you tell me a little bit how that works with children? They're open to it. Is it, daunting, scary? Just a little bit more about that, please. Oh.
Yeah, absolutely, Gina. And your daughter was about 4, right?
Yeah, nearly 4 in Jan.
Nearly 4. Fantastic. So it kind of looks a little different for each age. So as they get a little bit bigger, it's sort of a 1-to-1 thing, with mum or dad sort of sitting off to the side and assisting. But for littlies, we do sort of a surrogate testing, and sometimes we use mum or dad for that. So we do like a muscle strength test, and that's sort of how we ask questions of their system and their body to find out where that charge is, or some of those central stresses in that situation. But sometimes, you can be a little bit too close to the issue too. So we have our staff in the office will sometimes, they'll just be the arm for that testing. And we do that as a like a surrogate testing. And that gives us insights. And oftentimes, because it's a kind of an energetic thing, that it's, the kids are just sitting there. Sometimes they're daydreaming, and every now and again we just have to check in with them and make sure they're thinking about, think about when you need to go to the bathroom or things like that. And that sort of brings up any of those emotions that might correspond to that task, that experience. And then we move through it there. And to be honest, it's, it's nothing really, major for them. They kind of sit there, daydream, and then, oh, he's doing something, tapping away, doing the clearing on my spine, and having them focus on a certain thought. And then, that's my job, is to connect with them with the right words that actually make sense to them. And so that the way we talk with an adult with an NET, those sort of higher level words, phrases that make sense to the adult, we have to really kind of like simplify that into simple words that that the littlies can understand. But you're kind of testing and then clearing the energy and charge on it. So it's not a sort of a physical movement, if you like. It's sort of something that it happens, energetically and in that way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and to further that, it's not a big psychological verbal debrief. They're not really required to answer anything because their body's answering for you. So they can just be kids. And like my son, like he is adjusted by Morgan, so we do the adjustment and then we just sit down and do an NET quickly, and it's over and done within a matter of minutes. But it gives us the idea of where that's coming from, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Is there, I'm in Brisbane City, well, not city, suburbs. Is there anyone that or could refer around this area?
Absolutely. I can look that up. And I know, Ren, we talked with you yesterday about tracking someone down in your local area. We can definitely have a look at that. And perhaps if we chat via email afterwards, I was just talking to Letitia that we might do it that way, and we can find out, exactly where you are and give you some places, some referrals.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thank you so much.
Did you have any other questions, Gina, or we can go on?
That's my pending issue at the moment, so that's all good. Everyone else can have the stage.
No worries. Thank you.
Can I just add something as well? It's sometimes interesting because the issue is never the issue. It's something I've experienced. So when we're doing an NET, sometimes the things that will come up around it, the charge, if you like, it probably is not specifically related to, in that situation, the bathroom or anything like that. It may be about the feel of that, or the pressure, or things like that. So it's always kind of curious, especially for a parent, I find, with what comes up. It can really give you a new language to speak with your little person. And that's powerful, because those conversations are every day, and sometimes what we think is the issue, and the right words to kind of flow with that thought process, they may be on a different tangent. And so we've often done a lot of NETs around sleep and things like that with kids and parents, and it's fascinating that just the insight of what that may be about for the kids. And so that just dramatically changes the languaging around it, which might be about, we go, all right, well, they think they're alone, or they're scared, you know what I mean? And so we talk about, be brave, and you're safe in here, and those are the conversations before bed. But really it may be about missing out on the fun that you're doing. Do you see what I mean? So
yeah,
that totally shifts the conversation. And like anything, if we're speaking different languages, we, try as we may, we just won't kind of hit that point where the message will translate. So sometimes being on that same thought, that same wavelength, it's effective, because then all those follow-up conversations really hit that spot. And then, that really kind of connects with what is actually happening for the kids. So that's another little distinction in that as well, which translates to then those follow-up actions and so forth.
Ren had a question. Sorry, thank you. Did you all happy there, Gina? Sorry.
Totally fine. Thank you.
Yep, cool. Did we want to answer the other question for Ren, which was, can this technique help with recovery from narcissistic abuse where you cannot disconnect from them as you share children? Did you want to go into that further, Ren, or are you happy just us answering that question from here? She may not be able to talk. Are you cool to take that question, Morgan?
Yeah, sure. It's a challenging one for sure, right? And life brings us situations where other people are involved, and we just have to deal with that. And the obvious thing would be like, okay, well, that's challenging, so I'll just totally disconnect and have nothing to do with that person, problem solved. But, like yesterday we kind of talked about, is that those challenging people can sometimes be amazing teachers. And so sometimes just as a little pattern interrupt in the way that you're thinking about that, which, may naturally bring up resentment and frustration and things like that, is to kind of flip the switch on that and see how, they can be of service to you as a teacher. Not that you're condoning any of that behavior, but as making it an empowered process for you, as opposed to something that you have absolute say on, where you're the complete victim of that. So you can't be the victim and the creator at the same time. So it's a challenging one, that interplay between those two dimensions. Because if we're a master creator, then we can shift and morph that whole interaction totally translate that into a much more workable, useful relationship for, for the betterment of your kids, especially. So I've often found as well, when you're willing to take that on and challenge your own internal processes, dialogues around that relationship, the charge that's there that just sometimes creates that knee-jerk reaction where it's just, sometimes you just have to think about that person and it just irks you. It's as if that just dissolves and they have no influence. And like, just to give maybe an example of that, you know how like sometimes we'll be in conversation and things like that, and we'll be really cautious not to make ourselves look bad, and we end up kind of walking on eggshells and really not being ourselves, and inadvertently kind of falling into that trap of sort of saying something that's not us, that doesn't make sense, and because we're trying to do it a different way. Whereas if we absolutely just kind of own who we are, what we're about, then naturally we tend to put our best foot forward. And so it's kind of like that. If you just kind of get to the core of sort of doing you and just being you 100%, then that just naturally translates in a more cohesive way. Now I see you've got a question there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go for it, Rene.
Okay, I was going to say I'm having a lot of trouble finding the settings on this version of Zoom. Yes.
We got you loud and clear now.
Fabulous. I've got a fabulous therapist, so she's great. I now understand his behavior, because in my opinion, he's that covert narcissistic personality, and that has made me realize there's no rationalizing, there's no believing, there's no thinking he's going to change. Therefore, I need to own my reaction and own what I can control and try and let go of the rest.
Yep.
But what I struggle with is he uses my kids to get at me. And I need to face this guy in court in a few months' time, and I need to be able to hold my shit together.
Sure.
And I cry all the time, and I just need to learn how to control those emotions and center myself so I can come across as completely rational. And also get that focus back in work. I find when I'm triggered, my brain just goes to fog.
Scattered all over the place. Yep.
So will this technique, and I know my health has gone to shit as well, but will this technique help sort of reframe that and try and get that control back?
I think there's definitely the possibility that can offer a whole bunch to you. As to the specific way of what might show up, you're only really going to be able to discover that as you pull back the layers and play with that. But just in that one step of a willingness to kind of show up and, try things a little bit differently, that's a powerful, framework to offer the possibility of change. So absolutely, I would say. And, by the sounds of it, you've already done some great work. So I think
I've come a long way. I just
pat yourself on the back. Yeah. Like sort of honor yourself for where you're at, and that you've improved, and that you want to expand on that even more. And that's beautiful. That's a nice sort of platform to sort of stand on the work that you've already done and take that deeper, and maybe sort of clear out some of that subconscious charge.
Because I've been brainwashed for 10 years straight that, basically worthless piece of, what? So I need to reprogram that. And as my therapist said, it's been 10 years of constant reinforcement. It's going to take time to undo all that conditioning.
Yeah. So it's a really, I guess the big thing is a commitment to the process, and then making that a consistent thing that you follow through on. And naturally, as you move forward, it's not a straight line either. As you make little breakthroughs, you have a win, and then that sort of stirs up some other things, and then you have a little ebb backwards, and then that leads into the next win and the next little breakthrough, which relatively speaking is way higher than the next. and then that just tends to oscillate. But the general direction and trend of that is that you're making huge steps forward. So, you know, commit to that process and give yourself some time. And, you know, I find that, you know, taking the pressure out of it is useful to just flowing with that journey of change.
Okay.
And if I can just add to that as well, when there is so much charge, like I'm hearing a lot of words from you, I want to feel this way, I don't want to feel that way. When you resist something and you don't want it, that's what's going to keep showing up for you. And I'm just about to post a link in here. There's a gentleman by the name of Matt Kahn, and he does a lot of chats online about whatever arises, love that. Because the more you try and control your anger or your rage or whatever emotion it might be to appear a certain way, I can guarantee, because I've been in your situation, it will just keep showing up. And guess what? It'll explode even more because you're not honoring what that emotion is trying to do for you. It is arising for you so you can love it, you can acknowledge where that pain is coming from, and you can heal. So until you start really diving into that, and I'm not saying diving in so you get stuck in it, but learning to love it, and rather than pushing it away, embracing it, that's when real change can happen. And again, I'm speaking from experience because, you know, I grew up with a narcissistic mother and some pretty abusive relationships in my life from key primary caretakers and partners. And that trust and that language of what was repeated in my head, you know, it would affect the way I would react. And I was very reactionary. And, you know, I would then go, oh, well, I've just reacted. I'm a piece of crap. I'm such an idiot. I can't control myself. How am I going to go do business when I react like that? And, you know, all this negative self-talk. And I started diving into my anger and where it came from. And I realized it was my anger that actually kept me alive through very, very serious abuse. And when I learned to love that anger, that's when I was able to transform it and transmute it and start healing on a much, much deeper level. And working with Morgan has allowed me to tap into that on a really, really deep level. We're talking deep trauma that I've been through. And I'm not saying that anyone else hasn't. But, you know, it's not, I'm just going in because of whatever reason. There's deep stuff that I've been unpacking. And Morgan's technique with NET was able to help me dive into the deeper parts of where it was coming from. And some of the stuff wasn't mine to own, but learning to love that stuff from my mum or my partners or wherever it's come from, my grandparents, allowed me to let go because I was willing to face it, love it, honor it, and just kind of disappears. You don't have to do anything either. Does that make sense?
Yep. How long did that process take? I mean, everybody's trauma is different.
39 years. No, but this is the thing. There is no end destination.
Yep.
Like everybody talks about, you know, awareness and this being transmuted to a 5D dimension and all this other stuff. We're forever learning. And if you acknowledge that every day is a journey and an opportunity for growth, every time you're triggered by someone, you go, oh, triggered, this is awesome. What can I learn from this person? And you can't hate them. You look at them and go, yes, you're awesome. What am I going to learn about myself now because you've just triggered me? Don't get me wrong, some people are just douches and you don't want to hang around them because they're like they're douches, but you know, we're talking about the people who really trigger you. And if there's a pattern, you go, okay, this is cool, I can learn from this. And
I must
you know,
say through working, pretty consistently for the last 18 months with a very, very good therapist, I feel like you could go get a master's degree in psychology because I find she's not just a therapist, she's a teacher. And that's why I like her. And I'm happy to learn.
Yeah. And that's you're curious, and the ownership, and you know, if you can apply that practice of not trying to control your emotions in the traditional sense, because that's just suppressing them and pushing them down. And that's only going to make you sick in your body. Like Morgan was talking about yesterday, that's where disease comes from.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've got this opportunity right now with COVID pushing a lot of people indoors to go into ourselves and go, right, what do I need to address here? Because clearly something's not going right in the world, which is a clear reflection of what happens to us on an individual level. We're all energetically connected. So if we start taking responsibility for ourselves, we can start taking wider responsibility for changing the world.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Thank you.
The other one I would share, just as maybe a link, I can try to dig this up, but there's a great TED talk and a great book by Brené Brown, The Power
Rene.
of Rene.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I pronounced it wrong, but it's fabulous. It's something that my wife and I talk about all the time, and it's one of those just different ways of thinking. Instead of basically praising that strength, that kind of non-emotive state, which, you know, I would actually reframe, that's not strong, that's a weakness. I would say you want to be vulnerable, and that should be praised. So that's about opening up, exposing all that stuff, totally crying if that's what you need to do in that moment, and honoring and expressing those feelings. So that, you know, it's the strength is from the vulnerability, not the, you know, stoic kind of state, which is totally a reframe, because, you know, naturally we learn probably, you know, from the people in our lives, our parents and so forth, and you know, sometimes we just perpetuate the same kind of challenges, and so if we can bring that awareness to that, and, you know, start changing and reflecting on how we do things, we awaken those things. And also then for our children, we model that breakthrough, and that is the best teacher you can be. I always sort of talk about how, you know, like The Biggest Loser and shows like that, people are kind of drawn to them, and it's not because people are perfect, it's because they're flawed and they transform and they're willing to change and they do this work. And that's what, you know, naturally people are you know, love watching and seeing. So you know, don't try to be the perfect parent, try to be that masterpiece and the work in progress all at the same time. And just, it's a continual journey through that in life, and you'll call upon your team, your you know your psychologists or psychiatrists and chiropractors and NET people and all of those people, and they'll just help, and they'll be really pivotal at times, and then they'll be your little you know, shoulder to lean on at another time. And that just helps you journey through life and evolve and expand and, you know, take on more and push comfort zones and, you know, continually evolve.
Makes sense. Just one thing you said there about the kids. I've been specifically told to control my emotions in front of my children. That
Yeah,
they need to see me holding it together.
I would have a completely different, you know, advice on that, because my observation is, if you think you can hide it from them, you know, you're wrong. They know, they can feel it. And sometimes you'll see them do that. They'll come up next to you and you won't be outwardly crying. Maybe you went around the corner and did that for a few seconds, but they know. So, you know, the first kind of point is there's no faking it. You can't do that well enough to ever hide it. So, you know, again, taking on that idea as a role model, how would you want to role model healthy emotions to a young person? You know, that's what I think about.
Well, that's one of the issues with my 8-year-old is he doesn't know how to, because obviously my ex-husband doesn't really display emotions.
Sure.
And therefore he doesn't have a language to emotions, and he tends to act out with his fists. So I think, again, if I hold them in, how am I teaching him what emotions feel like?
Absolutely. So you've got an amazing power to do that. And the interesting thing is it's not about fixing your 8-year-old. It's actually about expressing your own emotions, and taking that empowerment in your hands and grabbing onto that fully and owning all of them. So sometimes I will just totally well up and bawl, and the kids kind of come over to me and go, "What's wrong, Daddy?" And I'll be like, I'm feeling sad and I want to cry and release that, and this is a good thing for me to do. And they'll cuddle in and just be with me, and they know they don't have to fix anything, and that emotion's okay. And so I want to make sure that they see every bit of that, because I want them to be able to do the same, and for me to be there for them, not to try and fix that emotion, to kind of switch it off as quick as possible, to honor those feelings and share with those. And sometimes I find as a parent, it's more about asking the questions and not giving the answers. So it's it's that Socratic method of discussion, because my perspective is especially kids, they come into this world pure, and sometimes the world can kind of morph them and teach them things, and it's actually a kind of a journey of you come in pure and you get sort of steered in a wrong direction, and then the journey of life is kind of coming back to that sort of source, that purity again. So they have it all within them. They have that deep understanding. It's not something that has to be pushed in, it's something that has to be pulled forth. So it's actually interesting when you look at the meaning, the sort of Latin roots of words. Education, the Latin root of that word means to draw forth. So you to draw forth the knowledge that's already within them. And so that's how I would say is a wonderful tool to play around with it. And coming into that little bit older, 8 level, that's going to be some amazing conversations. So I often say to my daughter, what's your body telling you? And it might be we've been at a party and there were lots of lollies, and, we don't really do that too much. So, it's sort of, what's your body telling you? I could say to her, hey, honey, you're going to feel sick. This is going to be terrible tomorrow. Or we can say, hey, honey, what do you think your body's telling you right now? And, different ages come up with different things, like, oh, I need more ice cream, Dad. And like, oh, okay, how fascinating that your body's saying that so specifically. But you don't make them wrong about that. If they're answering you and engaging in that process, then that's phenomenal. And just keep asking those questions, and that gets their cogs turning and their head thinking, and then they're actually pulling from that knowledge, drawing forth that knowledge from within themselves. And it's a really powerful thing on a lot of levels, because they become their own validator. They don't need someone externally to tell them that they're good enough or whatever. They can draw that information forth, and they can also become really critical thinkers as to, was that useful what I did, or can I expand or improve upon that, and what's there to learn from that thing. So asking those questions and sort of drawing forth those insights with little people is so powerful on so many levels, and I would say that's just a thing to just do forever and continuously, and then it's amazing what you will see come out of their mouth, and you'll just be blown away. Some of the questions, some of the answers that will flow from those discussions, you'll be in awe of that which your kids already knew, and you're like, wow, where did you come from? Because you're like, you're like so much more knowledgeable than I am of all my, so many decades of life, and you're not even 10, and you've kind of made these connections. So it's all just that journeying through that open space together.
And I think, sorry, did you have something else?
No, I was going to say that makes sense. I did do with a social worker. I don't even know how it got put in LinkedIn. We've got fantastic services in Australia if anybody's going through anything like this. they just came from everywhere. But I did 3 months one-on-one learning emotion coaching for kids, and that has really helped to try and tune in to, I mean, they're going through this as well as me. So yeah, amazing to actually listen to them and see what they've got to say.
For sure. And if I can add another resource that may be useful for everyone, is that love languages is a really good one. And it sort of speaks to this whole dialogue of speaking in their language and that flexibility on our part to express things in a way that they need so that we can connect with them more deeply. And so instead of requiring them to shift so they understand us because we're just speaking our fixed language, if we're flexible enough to shift the way that we might like it into their language, it's so much more powerful. And again, it's one of those pivotal shifts that opens up these doorways to these amazing conversations. So I highly recommend that. There's lots of different books, and even for relationships or just even knowing your own languages, there's a questionnaire that you can do online to figure out your preferences of those 5 love languages.
Yeah, I've just posted the link for the kids one in there
perfect.
as well.
Yeah, it's really brilliant. I can't, and there's for teenagers and there's for children. Yeah, there's a different book for kind of each age bracket. Really, really, really powerful stuff.
So we're over time, but if you ladies have any more questions, like feel free to throw those forward. Otherwise, we might wrap up. But I think you know, that last subject of intuition, I think it's really important to, we're all born with the inherent ability of all the knowledge that we know. It is inside us. Society and our culture has just forced us to repress that, push it down, and not actually empowered us to go in to get the answers that we need. And children between 0 and 7 are beautiful creatures, because that is when they're least tainted by the world, so to speak. And that's when they're actually closest to be able to pick up on those intuitive answers and responses. So those unencumbered responses, as comical as they may be, you know, those first thoughts are often where we get the most insight as to what's going on for ourselves as well. So really learning to give ourselves space and time to tune into our first response answers when we're asking those questions of ourselves. Did you, Simone, Ren, did you have any more questions at all, or are you happy to wrap it up?
No, I didn't have any questions. I just, my notes yesterday. So the comment about fine, freaked out, irrational, neurotic, emotional. Yeah, that's my go-to. Yeah, I'll say fine. And that's actually a really good description, because that's probably what's going on. And the right side, left side, masculine, feminine, I thought was really interesting. And I think back to my childhood, and I grew up with a lot of pain behind my left shoulder blade. And it was sort of identified when I was in high school as being scoliosis, like slight scoliosis. And then I kind of, I grew out of it. And I guess as I became, I'll say, my own person and took a path and took myself away from that, that situation. Once I sort of became older, that all went away. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and I think thank you for sharing. And I think what's really interesting as well with our body is what Morgan was saying yesterday. We'll have signs, and if we're listening, it'll take us on a journey of discovery. And I remember when I started seeing Morgan, I've been big into personal development for many, many years. And I sort of kept going. And I was starting to get really disheartened, going, well, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? I'm investing all this money and time and energy, and I'm giving back, and I'm doing all this stuff. When's it going to end? Which is the wrong attitude. I know that now. But when I started seeing Morgan, like everything, I've been pretty pain-free my whole life. I'm pretty injury-free, but everything was starting to break in my body, like top to toe. I walked through everything that was wrong and all these ailments. He goes, yeah, you are in a bit of a mess, aren't you? And as we walked through that, I think it was a 12-week initial program of adjustments, not only did the pain start going away physically, but it started allowing my body to open up and release little areas of emotional blockages that were the key to me finally digging into some of the bigger trauma and pain that I just wasn't able to crack into for all my other work. And I needed that physical release to be able to dive deeper into that, to release it at a very, very deep neurological, physiological level. And that's what's been super transformative for me, is being able to get that physical support matched with that emotional and psychological release.
Yeah. And I think it's just been, I've spent 20 years of my adult life, boxing that stuff. And then it's only now. So yeah, we talked about it last week. This is all just starting to make sense into how to deal with what I'm calling Pandora's box, because it's kind of been opened now, and it's, I thought it was just, that's just it. And I'm with that, what Morgan talks about, it makes you stronger. And I've always been that, I'm grateful for the experiences because it's got me to where I am. But equally, it is still, I'm now at a point where I actually acknowledge that it's also holds me back.
Yes.
But I think it's,
I still have to deal with it. I still have to learn to sit with it and to stop it coming in a negative way.
Or you could just love it.
Because I think that's very, very insightful. And I've made a bunch of observations with the people that I've worked through, and even myself. Sometimes your breakthroughs become your barriers. It's a really weird concept, but sometimes we create this side of ourselves to get through a challenging part of our life, and then we don't switch it off. We keep it that way. And though that may have been hugely beneficial to break through that challenge, if we don't then continue to evolve and expand and, put that on the shelf and expand on another element of ourselves and be in this flexible state where we're using all of those qualities we have, we get into this fixed, stuck way of doing things. And that's a huge limitation. And that's why I see it as not really a destination that you get to, but just a continual journey of discovery and connecting more deeply with who you are and what you're about and what you're here to do on this earth, your kind of purpose, the core of who you are. And, just keep that evolution of things flowing and enjoy the ride. I feel like I've not come to the arrival point yet. I just feel like there's still so much for me to learn. And I take every day as that of like an opportunity to grow and expand more. And I feel so grateful for what I do with working with so many people, because as much as I try to help them, they are massive teachers for me. And so they help me grow and show up areas where I'm stuck that I can do work. And it's a really amazing, joyful experience. And, I just love that whole flow and dance of that journey and enjoy the ride of it. I don't feel like you ever get done with it. You just go for more and continually you just expand along that path. And I feel like that takes, it's such a lighter energy when you see it that way. And that would be just a wonderful spot to kind of get to. I think you'll really enjoy that.
Yeah. And I think probably like Letitia said, I've spent, a solid 9 years where, I've done lots of self-development, personally, professionally, and it's only been the last, I would still in denial probably back in February, March this year. So it's really probably only been the last 3 or 4 months that I realized it doesn't matter how much personal development I do, this is always holding me back. And so until I actually acknowledge and deal with that, I'm at a point where I feel like, that's my blockage right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's I'll post the link in a second, but Matt Kahn was speaking to this subject of, if you look at all of the great gurus of the world, none of them will ever proclaim that they have all the answers. They will never say they've arrived. They will always say that they're a beginner, they're a learner. They are not here to save the world. They're here to continually learn. And that's the point of this is, if you think we'll be happy when we get to this destination, we'll arrive, when I get this, when I get that, then I'll be happy. Happiness already exists within us. We've just got to get out of our own bloody way and just accept that there's happiness there. And there's this book that I'm about to post. If you've, it's written by Rhonda Byrne. Everyone knows The Secret. To be honest, I hadn't read The Secret. This is another book called The Greatest Secret, which she wrote after that. And it talks about this journey of coming back to yourself and realizing that you are happiness and that it's not a destination. And if we get out of our own way, we start actually realizing that all of the obstacles are our greatest teachers. And that's when we can start experiencing happiness and stop having those reactions as much as we are, because we're realizing that kind of not real. It's not like you create your own drama by being in your thoughts of being in the past or future, if that makes sense. Very rarely are the problems existing now. So there's lots of reading for you guys. I do audiobooks because I can exercise or do my housework or whatever I want, and rest my eyes because I'm often in front of a screen all day. So those audiobooks are really good. And Audible usually offers a free first book. So follow that link if you do want to jump on and have a listen to The Greatest Secret or any of those other books. I think I listened to the 5 Love Languages on there as well. So if everyone's happy, we might wrap up. Was there anything else, Morgan, that you wanted to add?
No, just thanks for all sharing, and the power of vulnerability. It's a wonderful thing, and thank you all for doing that. That was wonderful, and I hope the chats that we've had have been useful and insightful, and go forth and take some massive action and have fun with it, play with it. It's a really nice ride, and just flow in that way.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I didn't even know what this technique was until this presentation. It certainly opened my eyes to something else that I'm excited to explore.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it either. So I thought I was just going along to get my back adjusted. And then all of a sudden I'm diving into this world of NET. So yes, it's amazing where life takes you and shows you, it gives you people when you're ready for them as well, and treatments or whatever it might be. And it's funny because I was reflecting on this yesterday. Nothing that of my journey the past few months where I feel like I've had the most sort of grounding and breakthrough, nothing that I've learned is actually new. I've been shown and taught all of that many, many times, but for some reason I was ready to land it. And I think that is because I had those treatments of the NET and the chiropractics with that as well, where physically I was being adjusted so it could finally settle and clear out of that. And I'm not saying my work's done. Hell, I've still got the rest of my life. But yeah, I think these techniques are just that. They're tools to educate us, as what was that, bringing forth the information, education, Latin derivative, drawing forth. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for everyone who jumped on today and shared and asked questions. And I do love these Q&A sessions because that's, I don't know, I do I do a lot of learning through other people, and I know other people do as well. So thank you everybody who's jumped on, and Morgan, of course, thank you for your expertise and sharing your time with us. And I'll be sure to share the email addresses of those people who've asked for the referrals.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.